The photographs, artifacts, and evidence we have collected unequivocally indicate the existence of a lost and unknown civilization, predating all others not by a few hundred or thousand years, but by many thousands of years. These discoveries are so extraordinary that they will not be easily accepted by official opinion, historians, and archaeologists. A radical paradigm shift in the way we interpret our history is necessary. Imagine discovering traces of an ancient civilization, so ancient that it predates not only all known civilizations but even the appearance of humans on our planet. Today, we will explore this incredible narrative, which challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations, a story shrouded in the mists of time but corroborated by numerous ancient texts. Let's begin our journey, and if you haven't done so yet, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work. Tracing human history according to the official narrative, it is believed that Homo sapiens first appeared on our planet between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago in Africa. The first organized societies, according to this historical view, would emerge about 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia with the Sumerian civilization. Faced with this information, a question naturally arises: if in just 6,000 years humanity has developed advanced social and technological skills, moving from a primitive society to space exploration, what did humans do in the preceding 200,000 years? Is it really plausible that it took all these years to evolve from living in caves to a more advanced civilization? For centuries, in the valleys and hills of South Africa, local legends have handed down tales of an ancient place, whose memory has gradually faded over time. These narratives, passed down from generation to generation, evoke the image of an ancient forgotten civilization, of which no traces remained. Johann Heine, an expert pilot specializing in firefighting operations, has dedicated many years of his life to flying over the Mpumalanga region, located about 300 kilometers from Johannesburg, on the border with Mozambique. From his privileged view from above, Heine spotted something extraordinary: huge and mysterious circular stone ruins. The intriguing discovery prompted him to document these strange structures through a series of photographs. Researchers to whom Johann Heine showed the photographs initially claimed that they were simply remains of an ancient site called kraal, a kind of enclosure historically used by the Bantu population to protect livestock. According to this theory, the enclosures were abandoned during the migrations of the 10th and 11th centuries, and their use was forgotten by history. However, everything changed when Heine, together with independent researcher Michael Tellinger, began to systematically examine the site. What the two men would soon discover would be shocking. Observing the site from above, Tellinger and Heine noticed the immense extent of these structures, which from ground level were almost unrecognizable due to the vegetation and sand covering them. But from above, they appeared in all their majesty. While many of these structures seemed severely eroded by time, some had miraculously survived so well as to reveal their imposing dimensions. Some original walls still stood almost 2 meters high and over 1 meter wide. Observation from this perspective clearly suggested that this was a work carefully planned and executed by an advanced society. The site, according to the two researchers, seems to be part of a vast and ancient metropolis. Analysis of aerial photographs would suggest that the city would have extended over an impressive area of 5,000 square kilometers. But this area would constitute only a portion of an even more extensive community that would cover well 35,000 square kilometers. In fact, rather than talking about a single site, it is more correct to speak of multiple sites. To give you a good understanding of the size of these places, in the description of this video you can find the coordinates that you can enter on Google Earth to personally view the region. Within this vast settlement, particular networks can be identified that seem to resemble modern road connections. Some of them extend for tens of kilometers and would appear to connect what looks almost like a city to the surrounding fields. The organization and structure of these settlements show surprising similarities with those of the ancient Inca civilization in Peru. But there is an additional interesting fact. According to some analyses carried out by Tellinger, powerful magnetic anomalies would be recorded within these circles. The measurements of energy have established that the circles still generate huge amounts of energy. We measured electromagnetic waves, sound waves, and heat signatures. We recorded a sound of over 103 decibels coming from the walls of some circles, a heat signature of over 80 degrees Celsius and 1,800 megahertz. These are still very active and energetic places. Moreover, within the circle, satellite signals are lost. If you step in there, the signal disappears. If you step back, the GPS works again, and all this is due to the strong electromagnetic field. Whoever created this stone system, no matter who they were, those people undoubtedly had a high degree of knowledge of acoustics and astronomy. It is worth considering that South Africa, and in particular the area near this incredible discovery, is rich in ancient gold mines that are still being exploited today. South Africa is, in fact, among the countries with the largest presence of gold underground. At this point, the question arises, is there a correlation between this ancient site and the extraction of gold from the mines? But it is also true, however, that it is not clear what these ancient inhabitants could have done with a metal like gold, a metal that requires a great physical and organizational effort to extract and that could certainly not be used for practical purposes such as food or tools. So, why would a still primitive society have to extract gold in large quantities? What was it used for? After this extraordinary discovery, the next challenge was to date these imposing structures. The use of carbon-14 for dating was not feasible, as the presence of wood or similar materials could be influenced by events subsequent to the construction of the site. As we know, dating stone is not possible. However, there is a particular method, the analysis of the oxide patina that forms on stones over time. Each stone structure, in fact, depending on its composition, accumulates deposits over the years that react with air and humidity, creating a colored patina on the surface. If this patina is not removed or damaged, the color and thickness accumulated can provide indications of the age of the stone on which it has formed. The characteristics and growth rates of the patina also depend on the composition of the stones themselves, and in this case, being siliceous rocks, the analyses have indicated an age of just over 200,000 years. This first clue suggests that these constructions may have been erected in a very distant time and that, over many millennia, they were then used by various cultures that have succeeded in that region, including, for example, the Ba-Koni, to whom they are commonly attributed and who instead, according to this first estimate, would have only used them and certainly not built them. Reinforcing this extraordinary dating is another discovery, made by chance in 2003, thanks to Johann Heine. During his exploration, Heine identified a series of large stones protruding from the ground. Approaching, he noticed that they were curiously aligned according to the Earth's cardinal points. After weeks of measurements, Heine concluded that these stones marked solstices and equinoxes and therefore represented a sort of ancient calendar. The calendar was designed to be aligned with the four cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, but also features a stone carved in the shape of a falcon, believed to be related to the Egyptian deity Horus. This sculpture marks the sunrise during the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere of the planet. I believe it is related to the Egyptian deity Horus. This sculpture is the oldest stone depiction of Horus ever found to date. It is known that Horus always represents the sunrise, so this could mean that we are in front of the place of the primordial Horus. In ancient Egypt, there was a correlation between the deities and the stars. This association was based on the belief that the Egyptian gods were connected to specific constellations and that these influenced life on Earth. The constellation of Orion, for example, known in ancient Egypt as Sa, was often associated with Osiris, the god of the underworld and regeneration. Osiris, father of Horus, had a strong connection with death and rebirth, and his association with Orion can be interpreted as a celestial representation of these beliefs. The constellation of Orion was thus seen as a place where Osiris reigned in the afterlife. Starting from these premises, the first attempts to date this ancient calendar were based on the observation of the dawn of Orion, the constellation famous for its 3 bright stars that form the belt of the legendary hunter. Surprisingly, researchers noticed that the stones seemed to match the constellation of Orion, but there was a problem. They appeared shifted from the ideal line of the horizon, as if they had been moved to another position. This, in fact, is normal. We know that the Earth, over time, wobbles on its axis, causing changes in the angle of presentation of the stars and constellations in the night sky. This rotation is known as precession and completes a cycle every 26,000 years. Therefore, if one could determine when the 3 stars of Orion's belt were aligned horizontally relative to the horizon, it becomes possible to estimate the exact moment when the 3 stones of the calendar were erected in line with these visible stars. An initial approximate calculation had suggested an age of at least 25,000 years, but, as we will see, more precise measurements have indicated a much older age. To estimate the exact age when the 3 stars were perfectly aligned with the megaliths, it was necessary to consider the natural erosion that these had undergone over the years and the fact that part of these rocks were broken, and their fragments lay on the ground. The most recent and accurate calculation, which takes into account all these variables, was conducted in June 2009 and indicated an age of at least 160,000 years. This new count took into account both the apparent rising of Orion on the horizon and the erosion that time has caused to the megaliths. Before us, then, is a startling revelation. Who could build a structure of this complexity 160,000 years ago? As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, Homo sapiens is thought to have appeared on Earth 200,000 years ago. So, how could such an advanced civilization exist almost contemporaneously? Clearly, it is impossible. But if we go back in time and retrace the history of human origins, we find a fascinating coincidence that seems to link this place to the appearance of Homo sapiens. If indeed we follow the path of humanity, we can go back in time to a point where Homo sapiens, that is, we, modern humans, evolved from more primitive ancestors known as hominini. Although scientists have not yet fully understood how and why this new human form suddenly emerged, we can still trace our DNA back to a single woman, called Mitochondrial Eve, the most recent common matrilineal ancestor of all living humans. As we know, in fact, we all inherit our mitochondrial DNA, which is transmitted only from mother to children. Scientists estimate that Mitochondrial Eve might have lived between 150,000 and 250,000 years ago in East Africa, precisely south and west of Tanzania. It would seem, therefore, that we are all direct descendants of this human woman, who might have lived in the same region as the mysterious and fascinating structures we are discussing. Well, before we go further, let's take a moment to summarize the situation. We said that Heine and Tellinger have identified the remains of what appears to be an ancient archaeological site. The dating techniques they have used seem to place this site in an ancient epoch, and that this not only coincides temporally with the birth of our species, but also the places seem to be the same. All of this is obviously intriguing and fascinating, but must be studied and explored with extreme caution, because we are talking about a discovery that, if after years of investigations were confirmed even in part, would appear not only as the greatest archaeological discovery ever made, but would overturn everything we know about our origins. But now let's delve into the most curious and mysterious part of this story. Those looking for certainties and scientific proofs can stop here, because they will not find satisfactory answers to their questions. But those who are instead eager to immerse themselves in a journey to a very distant and mysterious era can join us in the second part of this video and ask themselves, with an open mind and free from prejudice, if everything that Tellinger and Heine have discovered is correct. Who could have built these structures in such a remote epoch? As we mentioned earlier, in this particular region of South Africa, we know that there are ancient gold mines, and that these might have had a mysterious connection with this discovery. Well, if we examine Sumerian mythology, we discover that gold mines would have played a fundamental role in this whole story. The oldest commonly accepted civilization is the Sumerian one, which developed in Mesopotamia in 3500 BC, in the region known today as Iraq. From the Sumerians, we have inherited many stories, myths, and legends, many of which have then been taken up and reworked by the cultures that have succeeded over the years. In the Enuma Elish, which is one of the most famous Sumerian epic tales, the origin of the world and the Sumerian deities are narrated. The gods, according to Sumerian mythology, were divine beings who came from the sky or from a place called Nibiru. These were superior beings, with divine powers and advanced abilities. According to Sumerian mythology, in a remote time on Earth, there were two categories of deities: the worker gods, who had the task of building infrastructure and working in the gold mines, gold that was intended for activities outside our planet, and the ruling class, which was composed of the deities who commanded all the lesser gods. After thousands of years of this work, the worker gods rebelled against the deities who had command, because they considered the work in the mines too hard. The deities, unable to quell the revolt, decided to solve the problem by creating a hybrid that would work in their place. This hybrid was man. Belit-ili, the goddess of the womb, is present. Let the goddess of the womb create her offspring, and let man bear the burden of the gods. To create humanity, the gods would have killed Gestu, a god who had intelligence, and from his blood, mixed with clay, humanity was born. What is narrated in these ancient texts, seen with today's knowledge, appears as a sort of in vitro fertilization, from which an evolved being was born that was able to perform the functions of the worker gods. Other texts also explain that the deities had descended to Earth to extract gold. But once this operation was concluded, it was decided that humanity, which in the meantime had grown enormously, should die. A powerful flood, which would have unleashed an inundation so great as to destroy our planet, would have caused the death of men. According to the story, however, one of the gods had sympathy for a human being called Ziusudra. This warned him that, to survive, he would have had to build a boat. When the flood arrived, it flooded the earth and destroyed much of humanity. But Ziusudra was saved, and with him his family and all the animals that had found a place on the boat. The presence on the South African territory of these ancient structures, the presence of ancient mines, and the coincidence of times and places of the birth of man, has led several researchers to hypothesize that what is written in the Sumerian texts is not just a myth or legend, but has concrete corroborations. Clearly, there is no evidence that all this really happened, but we cannot deny that this story is particularly fascinating, and that it opens suggestive hypotheses. Especially if we consider that there are innumerable testimonies handed down over time that come from various places on the planet, and that they all tell the same story. The discovery of these incredible structures, regardless of what one may think of it, deserves to be investigated and explored. And who knows, maybe one day we might discover that not everything reported in Sumerian mythology is the fruit of fantasy, but that something extraordinary really happened. Who were these deities mentioned by the ancient Sumerians? Were they a people who came from the stars, or is it something else? We will continue to talk about this in the next videos, but for now, if this story has fascinated you and you have come this far, we are really curious to know your opinion. Write in the comments what you think, and, if you like the video and want to support our work, subscribe to the channel.